allowed her that emotion.
This was a drive-in right here. Was not called a foul. And wow, I gotta tell you, it was on and popping in this game.
Even make a move to try to keep Burton off.
Caitlin crashed out on the refs. Right here. Right here. She lost it. And you could tell at one point in the game, later after this, she got pulled out of the game, and I think she slammed the table on the way out of the game. But this is another look at this.
There's a league out there that spent decades begging for mainstream attention. Decades fighting for bigger arenas, better broadcast deals, more fans, more coverage, more respect. And after all of that fighting, after all of those years of struggle, the attention finally arrived. Record-breaking viewership, sold-out venues, jersey lines that could not keep up with demand, television networks competing for broadcast rights. A player so magnetic that she single-handedly pulled millions of brand new fans into women's basketball who had never watched a single game before. And according to a credible, nationally respected sports journalist with real sources inside the league office, the response from certain people within that organization was not celebration. It was not gratitude. It was a quiet, deliberate, documented strategy to limit her. We are talking about the WNBA. We are talking about Caitlin Clark. And we are talking about a report so damaging, so specific, and so backed by named sources and leaked internal correspondence that it cannot be dismissed as social media speculation. This is not a hot take. This is not a fan account with an agenda. This is a USA Today journalist with decades of credibility dropping information that should make every person who cares about women's basketball genuinely furious. Drop a comment right now. Do you believe the league is working against Caitlin Clark, or is this being overblown? Because by the end of this video, your answer might completely change.
Like, are they, like, my only logic is that they are hoping that something bad happens during this game tonight so that they can say, well, look, this has happened. We're reporting this whole fan base and something happened tonight.
To understand why this story matters as much as it does, you need to go back to the game where everything exploded into the open. Because the moment that triggered this entire controversy was not a loss. It was not a scandal. It was not a controversy that grew out of something negative. It was one of the most dominant individual performances in recent WNBA history, and the league's response to it is what set everything else in motion. The Indiana Fever versus the Golden State Valkyries. Caitlin Clark walks into that game and delivers a triple-double. Points, rebounds, assists, all in one performance, on a night where the Fever did not just win, but absolutely dominated. 35 points was the final margin. 11 records broken in a single game. The Fever outscored the Valkyries by a margin so wide it was difficult to process in real time. Think about what that kind of performance means in any other sport. If a player puts up a triple-double in a blowout win that breaks 11 records simultaneously, every sports network in the country leads with it the next morning. Highlight packages get assembled. Analysts debate the historical context. The league's official social media channels go into celebration mode because that is exactly the kind of moment every sports organization dreams of having attached to their product. That is not what happened here. Instead of leading with the record-breaking performance, instead of letting the basketball speak as loudly as it deserved to, a completely different conversation began consuming the oxygen around that game. Accusations emerged on social media. Claims that Indiana Fever fans in the arena had directed racial slurs at Valkyries players during the game. The WNBA announced it was launching a formal investigation. And suddenly, the triple-double was buried. The 11 records were buried. The 35-point margin was buried. Everything that Caitlin Clark did on that court, in one of the most complete individual performances of her young career, got pushed off the front page by an investigation triggered not by verified evidence, not by audio recordings, not by video documentation, but by tweets. Here is what made the situation even more striking. Natalie Nakes, the head coach of the Golden State Valkyries, the team that was supposedly on the receiving end of this alleged abuse, came out and stated clearly and without ambiguity that she did not hear anything inappropriate during that game. The coach of the allegedly targeted team said nothing happened. Multiple people who were physically present in that arena described what they heard as standard basketball crowd noise. the kind of heckling that happens at every professional sports venue in the country. And yet the investigation moved forward anyway, and Caitlin Clark's historic night kept getting smaller in the rearview mirror, while the controversy kept getting bigger in the windshield. That disconnect between what happened on the court and what the league chose to amplify afterward is exactly where Christine Brennan's reporting picks up. And what she found inside that league office is genuinely difficult to believe. Christine Brennan is not a blogger. She is not a podcast host recording takes from a ring-lit spare bedroom. She is a longtime sports journalist for USA Today with decades of credibility behind her name, real sources inside real organizations, and a track record of breaking stories that hold up under scrutiny. When she reports something, it carries weight that social media speculation simply does not. And what she reported about the WNBA's internal reaction to Caitlin Clark's rise is the kind of thing that, once you read it, you cannot unread it. According to Brennan's sources, a leaked internal correspondence from the league office contained a message from a senior WNBA official that read, and this is being quoted directly from the reporting, "Need to find balance in coverage. CC momentum becoming troublesome for league narrative." Sit with that for a second. A senior official inside the organization, describing the momentum of their most popular, most commercially powerful, most watched player as troublesome. Not as an opportunity, not as a gift, not as the kind of breakthrough moment that a league fighting for mainstream relevance for 30 years should be popping champagne over. Troublesome. Try to imagine any equivalent situation in professional sports history. Imagine the NBA in 2003 describing LeBron James's early momentum as troublesome for the league narrative. Imagine the NFL in 1994 deciding that Brett Favre's popularity was creating an imbalance problem that needed to be managed. The absurdity of those comparisons is exactly the point. No professional sports league with functioning leadership treats the organic rise of its biggest star as a problem to be contained. But according to Brennan, that is precisely what was happening inside the WNBA's offices while Clark was busy breaking records on the court. The investigation into the alleged arena incident was not, according to Brennan's sources, primarily motivated by a genuine concern for player safety or a commitment to addressing racism in the fan base. The objective, as described by people with direct knowledge of the internal discussions, was to find something that would create enough noise to shift media attention away from Clark's performance and back toward a more distributed, league-controlled narrative. That is a specific and serious allegation, and it comes from a journalist with the sourcing and the platform to back it up. The WNBA's official response was to call Brennan's reporting unfounded and unworthy of engagement. Notably, that response did not address a single specific claim in the report. It did not explain why the investigation was launched based on social media posts rather than documented evidence. It did not name any specific factual error in Brennan's piece. It was a blanket dismissal, without a single piece of counter-evidence attached to it. When an organization responds to detailed, sourced reporting by calling it unfounded without addressing any of the specifics, that response tells you almost as much as the original report did. And what it tells you is not reassuring, because what came next made everything even harder to explain away. 3 days after the investigation was announced, there was still no completion timeline, no expected conclusion date, no public statement about what evidence had been gathered or what the process of gathering it looked like. Just an open, ongoing investigation with no visible finish line, triggered by social media posts, into an incident that the opposing team's own head coach said she did not witness. The absence of any audio or video documentation of the alleged incident is the part of this story that deserves significantly more attention than it has received. We live in an era where every moment inside a professional sports arena is captured from multiple angles simultaneously. Broadcast cameras, fan phones, security systems, production crews recording every corner of the floor. If something audible and significant happened in that building during that game, some version of it would exist on tape somewhere. Multiple observers who were present at the game have noted that the sound used as supposed evidence of racist chanting was actually a well-known crowd noise effect, one that has been used at NBA venues for years, including at Pacers games. It is a recognizable audio element. It is, frankly, closer to a meme than to evidence of organized racist behavior. And yet this is the foundation on which a formal league investigation was constructed and announced to the public. According to Brennan's sources, the reason no completion timeline has been established is not because the investigation is complex or the evidence requires careful examination. The reason, as one WNBA source told Brennan directly, is that the league is waiting for another story to emerge that will naturally overshadow this one, allowing the investigation to quietly fade without a formal conclusion that would force acknowledgement of what the evidence actually shows, which is nothing. That is not how investigations are supposed to work. That is not journalism. That is not player protection. That is an organization managing its own public relations wound by waiting for time to do the work of accountability. And the people paying the price for that strategy are the Indiana Fever fans who have been implicitly labeled as racists based on tweets, without a single piece of verified evidence ever being produced to support that characterization. One WNBA source described the situation to Brennan this way, and this quote is worth reading carefully. They said that in a world where practically everything gets recorded, the fact that no audio or video of these claimed statements exists is because nothing occurred. The investigation itself has had a genuinely harmful effect on Indiana Fever fans and has constructed a narrative that lives entirely on social media rather than in demonstrable reality. The severity of an accusation, as the saying goes, is not the same thing as the quality of the proof. But by launching a formal investigation based on unverified tweets, the WNBA gave those accusations institutional weight they had not earned. And in doing so, they effectively dismissed an entire fan base in order to redirect attention away from what Clark did on that court. But the communications strategy behind all of this went even deeper than anyone realized. Here is where Brennan's reporting moves from alarming to genuinely difficult to rationalize, because the investigation was not the beginning of this strategy. According to her sources, a formal communications plan was developed and in place weeks before the Indiana Fever and Golden State Valkyries ever stepped on the court together. On the surface, a communications plan focused on coverage equity sounds reasonable. Sports leagues think about media distribution all the time. Making sure multiple players and multiple teams get meaningful exposure is a standard part of any league's marketing approach. Nobody would argue against the principle of broad, equitable coverage in women's basketball. But the specific contents of this particular plan, as described by Brennan's sources, go significantly beyond standard marketing strategy. According to what she was told, the plan outlined specific approaches to restrict the volume of articles and media segments centered on Clark, and to redirect coverage toward other players and storylines regardless of what was actually happening on the court. Regardless of on-court performance, that phrase is doing an enormous amount of work in this story, because what it means in practical terms is that the plan was not designed to respond to slow news days or fill gaps in coverage. It was designed to actively reduce Clark's media footprint during moments when her performance would have naturally generated the most attention. The plan was built to work against the organic flow of sports coverage rather than alongside it. And when you look at specific moments from Clark's career through this lens, the pattern that Brennan describes becomes impossible to ignore. After she surpassed the NCAA scoring record, internal WNBA communications reportedly suggested downplaying the achievement rather than celebrating it, with messaging that emphasized the fact that she played more games than previous record holders. A framing designed to shrink the accomplishment rather than honor it. When Clark's arrival drove a significant increase in WNBA draft viewership, the league's marketing response focused on the overall quality of the draft class rather than acknowledging the specific player whose presence had drawn those viewers to their screens. When Clark recorded her first WNBA triple-double last season, becoming the fastest rookie in league history to accomplish that feat, the league's official social media accounts initially highlighted a completely different statistical achievement from another player in the same game. It took public criticism before the official accounts properly acknowledged what Clark had just done historically. Each of these moments, looked at individually, could potentially be explained away as an editorial judgment call or an oversight. Looked at together, through the lens of a documented communications strategy designed to limit her media presence, they form a coherent and deeply troubling picture. This was not random. This was not careless. According to Brennan's reporting, this was coordinated. And the coordination extended beyond press releases and social media, posts into a dimension of the game that viewers at home have no direct visibility into. What happened on the court itself was apparently not off limits from this strategy either. Of every element in Brennan's reporting, The officiating dimension is the one that deserves the most careful attention, because it moves the conversation from institutional messaging and PR strategy into the actual competitive reality of what happens on the floor during games. And if accurate, it represents the most direct form of interference in Clark's career that has been alleged. A veteran referee spoke to Brennan directly, on Background, about the culture around officiating star players in professional basketball. The official explained that stars typically receive specific calls that veteran players have earned over time through their presence and reputation in the league. Rookies, by contrast, do not receive those calls automatically. They have to develop a reputation over time before officials treat them with that level of consideration. That part of the conversation is, as Brennan acknowledges, relatively standard for professional basketball. Stars get star treatment over time. That is a known, widely discussed feature of how officiating works in every major basketball league. It is not a conspiracy. It is just how the culture of officiating has functioned historically. But then the conversation shifted, and according to Brennan, the veteran official described something that goes beyond the standard rookie versus veteran dynamic. There have apparently been internal discussions about officiating approaches specifically designed to limit one player's effectiveness and impact on games. Not discussions about how to officiate fairly across the board. Not discussions about how to apply rules consistently. Discussions about how to use the mechanics of officiating as a tool to reduce one specific player's influence on outcomes. That level of specificity, directed at a named player, is categorically different from the standard star treatment conversation. Standard star treatment is a privilege that accumulates over time through reputation. What Brennan's source described sounds much more deliberate than that. And it lands with particular force when you consider Clark's documented history as the most fouled player in college basketball, followed by a WNBA career marked by unusually variable officiating that observers have noticed consistently throughout both of her professional seasons. She absorbs levels of physical contact that other guards in the league do not absorb regularly. She receives inconsistent foul calls in situations where the contact is visible and documentable. Players who guard her have been allowed to use techniques that, applied to other ball handlers in similar situations, draw whistles routinely. None of this is invisible to people who watch the games carefully. Fans have been pointing it out for 2 seasons. Analysts who study the film have noted the discrepancies. The WNBA's official response to the officiating allegations followed the same pattern as their response to everything else in Brennan's report. A blanket denial with no specific engagement with any of the particular claims. No statistical counter-evidence. No explanation of the documented inconsistencies. Just a declaration that the reporting is unfounded, followed by silence. When an organization's only defense against detailed allegations is a denial without specifics, the silence around the specifics starts to speak louder than the denial itself. And what the silence is saying connects directly to a much larger question about what the WNBA is actually afraid of. Here is the part of this conversation that gets lost in the back and forth between Clark's supporters and her critics, and it is genuinely the most important structural point in this entire story. Whatever you think about Caitlin Clark personally, whatever your take is on the media coverage surrounding her, whatever your position is on any individual moment from her career, the strategy that Brennan describes is not hurting only Clark. It is hurting every player in the league. The numbers on this are not ambiguous. Viewership across the entire WNBA has increased since Clark entered the league. Not just Indiana Fever games, not just games where Clark is the star of the box score. League-wide broadcasts are drawing more viewers. Teams that have no direct connection to Clark's storyline are seeing increased social media engagement. Merchandise sales across the league have gone up. Attendance figures at venues around the league have moved in a positive direction. Aja Wilson, Brina Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, Angel Reese, Kelsey Plum. Every one of these players, each of them genuinely elite and deserving of massive audiences, is being discovered by fans who started watching because of Clark and stayed because the product on the court is extraordinary. New fans do not stay loyal to one player in a vacuum. They develop relationships with the game itself. They learn other players' names. They develop preferences and rivalries and emotional investment in teams beyond the one that first grabbed their attention. This is how sports audiences grow. This is how every successful professional sports league has ever expanded its fan base. One magnetic entry point leads to a broader, deeper relationship with the sport as a whole. Michael Jordan made the NBA global. Tiger Woods made golf relevant to demographics it had never reached before. Serena Williams transformed the mainstream relationship with women's tennis. None of those leagues or sports responded to their transformative stars by quietly developing strategies to limit those stars' media presence. But according to Brennan's reporting, something close to that is exactly what has been happening inside the WNBA. And the reasoning behind it, as her sources describe it, comes down to something that is genuinely difficult to defend publicly: control. The WNBA operated in a relatively small, tightly managed media environment for many years. Limited coverage meant the league had considerable ability to shape its own narrative. There was not much outside noise to compete with the internal story the league wanted to tell. When Clark arrived and brought with her a wave of mainstream attention that was organic, enthusiastic, and completely outside the league's ability to manage or direct, it disrupted something that certain people inside the organization had grown comfortable with. The irony of this situation is almost too sharp to fully absorb. A league that fought for years against being ignored is now, according to credible reporting, developing strategies to limit the reach of the single biggest driver of the attention it always claimed to want. And the people paying the price for that institutional defensiveness are not the executives having those internal discussions. They are the players on the court who deserve every fan that Clark is bringing to their game. Through all of this, Caitlin Clark herself has said almost nothing that feeds the controversy. And for a 23-year-old in her second professional season, navigating a situation that would test the composure of a veteran athlete twice her age, the way she has carried herself deserves genuine acknowledgement. Her public position has been consistent and remarkably disciplined. She has stated clearly that she has no control over anything outside of how she plays and how she treats the people around her. That is not a polished media training response designed to deflect controversy. That is a person who has genuinely decided where to put her energy and has chosen to put it entirely into the thing she can actually affect, which is her performance on the basketball court. And that performance has been extraordinary. Her sophomore campaign has been one of continued development and evolution. She has responded to criticism of her defensive game with visible, documented improvement. Her efficiency has climbed. Her decision-making has sharpened. The triple-double against Golden State was not a one-off outlier. It was a data point in a consistent upward trajectory that her own numbers confirm regardless of how the league's social media accounts choose to frame them. Her teammates have been equally direct. Multiple Indiana Fever players have publicly stated their awareness of Clark's commitment to the team and to the league, and their support for her has been consistent and vocal rather than obligatory and scripted. Aaliyah Boston, the former #1 overall pick, whose own career and recognition could theoretically be framed as competing with Clark's spotlight, said directly that the purported agenda against Clark is disappointing. That is a meaningful public statement from a player who had every political reason to stay neutral. Natalie Nakes of the Golden State Valkyries also deserves specific acknowledgement here. Her team was on the receiving end of a 35-point loss in the game that triggered this entire investigation. She was the coach of the team that the racist chanting allegations were supposedly meant to protect. And she came out clearly, without ambiguity, and said she did not hear anything inappropriate during the game. That level of candor from someone in her position stands in direct contrast to the unnamed social media sources, whose posts apparently carried more institutional weight than the actual words of the actual coach of the allegedly targeted team. And then there is the All-Star Game situation, which is perhaps the single most revealing detail in Brennan's entire report. According to her sources, there have already been internal discussions within the league about the possibility of postponing this summer's All-Star Game in Indianapolis, which is Clark's home market, due to the unresolved controversy from the Fever Valkyries game. Postponing an All-Star Game in a player's home market, a game that would generate enormous local and national attention, because of an investigation with no evidence and no completion timeline, is a level of institutional self-sabotage that is genuinely difficult to comprehend from the outside. The basketball itself has never been better. The talent in this league is as deep and as skilled as it has ever been, and the biggest threat to all of it appears to be coming from inside the building. Here is where everything lands. A league that spent 30 years fighting for mainstream attention now reportedly has documented internal strategies to limit the reach of the player, generating more of that attention than anyone in the sport's history. A formal investigation launched on social media evidence. No audio, no video, no witness corroboration from the opposing team's own head coach is apparently being kept open specifically to avoid the awkward conclusion that nothing happened. A communications plan built weeks before a game that Clark then dominated is designed not to celebrate her performance, but to redirect attention away from it. A veteran referee describing officiating discussions specifically targeted at one player. An all-star game in her home market being considered for postponement because of an investigation that has produced no evidence. This is not a story about whether you like Caitlin Clark. This is a story about what happens when an institution becomes so defensive about change that it starts working against its own interests. History is full of organizations that fought unavoidable momentum and found themselves on the wrong side of it. The WNBA is at a crossroads, and based on Brennan's reporting, some people inside that building are actively choosing the wrong direction. What do you think happens next? Drop it in the comments below.